Alright, Monday. This is day 5. This would be week 3. And remember, you can check for an intro to computers. You can check the announcements, and it gives a layout of the week. So, first thing though, if you're interested in Cyber Defense Club, they're meeting Wednesday at 1:30, MH216. It's not very far from our classroom, PC229. And if you want to be involved and you can't meet Wednesday, you can talk to me, and we can work out something to get you the information, or at least get you so you can find out what it's all about. Unit 1 completion, talked a little bit that. I ran through about 10 minutes of internet history, and then we did the first skilled based. And it appeared to go well. I haven't checked them yet. So we only have a couple slides today. We want to talk a little bit, this unit's about communications. We're going to talk about how we communicate nowadays using the internet and some other means. And then we're going to talk about communications in terms of word processing. How we can edit some text and format some text, let's just say on a page, to make it so it's easy to read, or in some cases people format to make it hard to read, or whatever. So this unit is really about communications and the internet. Just learn a little bit more about that. So what I did is I ran through this little bit of a list of communications. So 1870, we had Western Union. We started using telegraphs, and they had telegraph poles, had these wires strung between them, and we could send messages back and forth. And it was in the 1870s, I believe, American telephone and telegraph started out. And in the early 1900s, it started to monopolize. In the sense the government said, yeah, we ought to do that. And so it was a monopoly. And so in our country, we all these phone lines, these are phone lines. Do they look like phone lines? Maybe not. But anyway, we started connecting everywhere, and we had switch devices and create phone companies. So then in the 60s, because of the Cold War, some of the idea, the government was concerned that there would be a disaster and these lines get cut. So they made sure we had communications that spanned different ways to get somewhere. So some communications was cut, we could still communicate. So they created the ARPANET, and that was a pretty general way of explaining it, but they did. They created the ARPANET in the 60s, and the ARPANET got commercialized in the 90s, and people invented World Wide Web. Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which allowed you to click and go somewhere. HTML, certain kind of code in which you could transfer that HTML between two locations, and a browser could look at it and say, okay, I see what that is. So the HTML allowed us to create hyperlinks, and Hypertext Transfer Protocol allowed us to send it through this new thing they started calling the internet, which really came from the word internetwork. It's the interstate between networks. All right. Okay. Early 1980s, prior, I think it up to 1984, somewhere's in there, the early 1980s, this monopoly was split up into various companies. There's like 7 or 8 of them, I forget exactly how many. And then they eventually morphed into things like Verizon and Sprint and AT&T, the new AT&T, and so forth. And we'll talk more about those later on. All right. So the next thing was the SBA, which was that Information Communications Technology Basics. So they did some file work, some browser work, and so forth. Okay? And then they need to remember to send me an email with an attachment and they did some research for that was in the test. Alright, so now we'll get going on Unit 2 this week. That's it.